Welcome back to Legacy Contracts, and if this is your first time here, we're glad you found us. This channel exists for attorneys who sense that something beneath the surface of their firm isn't quite working, even if it's hard to name. Here, we look beyond surface-level efficiency and into the invisible systems shaping how your firm operates, serves clients, and sustains growth. Through practical insight and honest conversation, we help bring clarity to what's often overlooked, so you can lead with intention, not assumption. If you're interested in building a law firm that's not just functional but thoughtfully designed, you're in the right place. Let's begin. Every law firm already has a decision architecture. Whether you've intentionally designed it or not, it exists. It determines how decisions move through your firm every single day. It determines who people go to when they're uncertain, who has authority to move work forward where approvals happen, and perhaps most importantly, where work slows down. Most managing partners spend a great deal of time thinking about their firm's structure. They think about hiring, technology, processes, growth, staffing. But there is another layer of structure operating underneath all of those things that rarely gets discussed. It isn't the organizational chart. It isn't your case management software. It isn't your written policies. It's the invisible structure that governs how decisions actually travel through your organization. At Legacy Contracts, we call this decision architecture. And after working with law firms of different sizes, we found something remarkably consistent. Many firms don't struggle because they lack capable people. They struggle because the architecture surrounding decision-making was never intentionally built. Instead, it formed over time, quietly, naturally, without anyone realizing it was happening. Today we want to explore what decision architecture actually is, how it develops, why it quietly creates leadership bottlenecks, and how firms can begin designing it intentionally. Section 1. Every firm builds one. One of the biggest misconceptions about organizational structure is believing that if something wasn't formally designed, it doesn't exist. But organizations don't work that way. Structure forms whether you design it or not. Think about the early days of almost any law firm. There are only a few people. Everyone knows what's happening. The managing partner answers most questions because they're the only person available to answer them. That makes perfect sense. The problem isn't how the firm starts. The problem is what happens afterward. The firm grows. Another attorney joins. A paralegal is hired. Then an office manager. Then intake staff. The team expands. But the decision pathways often don't. Instead, people continue operating exactly as they always have. The managing partner still approves the same questions, the same billing exceptions, the same client escalations, the same scheduling conflicts, the same vendor conversations, the same operational decisions, not because those decisions truly require partner involvement, but because that's simply where those decisions have always gone. Eventually, no one remembers why. It just becomes normal. That's decision architecture, not something intentionally designed, something accumulated. Section 2. Every decision teaches the organization something. One of the ideas we spend a great deal of time discussing with clients is that decisions don't simply solve problems. They teach people. Imagine a staff member encounters something they're uncertain about. Maybe it's a billing adjustment. Maybe it's an intake exception. Maybe a client requests something outside the normal process. The employee asks leadership. Leadership answers the question. Problem solved. Except something else happened. The organization learned where answers live. The employee didn't just receive information. They received instruction. They learned, when this kind of situation happens, this is where I should go. Now imagine that happening hundreds of times, then thousands. Eventually it becomes habit, and habits become expectations. Those expectations eventually become structure. Without realizing it, the organization has created a pathway. Not because anyone documented it, because everyone experienced it. That's one of the reasons decision architecture is so difficult to recognize. It develops through repetition, not announcements. Section 3. The two organizations every firm has. Most firms actually operate with two organizational structures. The first is documented. This includes your organizational chart, job descriptions, policies, procedure manuals, reporting relationships. The second structure is experienced, and in many firms it's the experience structure that actually controls day-to-day operations. The experience structure answers questions like, who actually makes the decision? Who should I ask? Who really owns this process? Who can approve an exception? Who always gets pulled into difficult situations? Those answers are rarely written anywhere. They're learned through observation. If your handbook says one thing, but daily experience teaches something different, employees will almost always trust experience. Not because they're ignoring policy, because experience consistently gives them feedback. This is why firms sometimes feel confused when documentation appears solid, but operations still feel inconsistent. They're looking at one structure while the firm is actually operating from another. Section 4. Why everything returns to leadership. One of the phrases we hear most often from managing partners is, everything eventually comes back to me. At first glance, that sounds like a staffing issue. Or maybe a delegation issue. Sometimes leaders wonder if their employees simply need more confidence, but many times that's not what's happening at all. Most employees don't intentionally avoid responsibility. They're responding to uncertainty. Think about it from their perspective. They're handling legal work, client relationships, deadlines, compliance, billing. The stakes matter. When ownership isn't completely clear, choosing the safest option makes perfect sense. Ask, confirm, escalate, wait, seek approval. None of those behaviors are signs of poor employees. They're signs of unclear architecture. And every time leadership answers without examining why the question arrived there in the first place, the architecture quietly reinforces itself. That's why decision architecture matters so much. It explains why firms continue experiencing the same interruptions year after year, even after hiring additional staff. They didn't hire into a stronger structure. They hired into the same one. Section 5. How to start designing it intentionally. The encouraging part is that decision architecture can absolutely be redesigned. But redesign doesn't begin by creating more policies. It begins with observation. Start asking questions like, where do decisions currently go when uncertainty appears? Which approvals genuinely require partner involvement? Which decisions have simply always gone to leadership because nobody ever questioned the path? Where do employees consistently hesitate? Which questions appear repeatedly? Those recurring questions are incredibly valuable. They're showing you exactly where your architecture needs attention. Once you begin documenting ownership, clarifying authority, creating visible escalation pathways, and reducing unnecessary approvals, the organization starts behaving differently, not because people changed, because the structure did. Every law firm already has a decision architecture, every approval, every exception, every escalation. Every repeated question has contributed to it. The question isn't whether your firm has one. The question is whether it's intentionally serving the future you're trying to build. At Legacy Contracts, we believe sustainable growth isn't created by asking leadership to carry more. It's created by designing systems that allow decisions, ownership, and accountability to live where they create the greatest value. If today's conversation resonated with you, we invite you to explore our additional articles, resources, and operational frameworks designed specifically for managing partners who want to reduce leadership dependency and build firms that can grow with greater clarity and confidence. And if you're wondering whether your firm's decision architecture is helping or quietly holding it back, the Structural Clarity Assessment is a great place to start. Together, we'll identify where decisions are getting stuck, where ownership is unclear, and where your operational structure can better support sustainable growth. We hope today's insight helped bring clarity to something that may have been operating quietly in the background of your firm. Progress doesn't always start with doing more. It often starts with seeing more clearly. Law firms aren't built overnight. They're shaped by the decisions you make once the invisible becomes visible. This is Legacy Contracts, and until next time, keep leading with clarity.